Hello everybody, this is an introduction to PhotoPea, which will be the photo editing software that we will be using. PhotoPea is an online photo editor. It's very similar to something like Photoshop or GIMP that are both desktop photo editors. Photoshop costs a bunch of money, GIMP is free. The advantage of PhotoPea is that it's not only free, but it's in the browser, so you'll be able to do it at home using pretty much any device that accesses the internet through a normal browser, and you'll need like a mouse and a keyboard as well. So a regular laptop or desktop computer. For anyone who's used real Photoshop in the past, you'll notice that it looks pretty similar. A lot of the icons are going to be the same, a lot of the placements of things and the words for things are the same. So a lot of the skills that you use working with PhotoPea will be transferable to other programs as well. Let's go ahead and get started with an intro project. And this project is just going to be to create a coloring page. So just go ahead and click New Project. Make sure that when you name your files, you name them with your last name. And then whatever the project is, in this case, I'll just say coloring. And for now, I'll just click Create. At this point, you could set your image size. I think what I'll end up doing is resizing the image later after I find my coloring page. So I'll do a search. I'd like, let's say, coloring page. Let me search for Star Wars. Look at my search options. Ooh. This Mandalorian looks pretty good. I'll just take a look at the image. So it looks like it's a 658 by 1213 sized image. I'm not sure if, so normally when you click on the image, it brings you to the original image. This kind of still looks like a small thumbnail. Let's just see what happens if I copy it. So I'm going to click right click, I'll click copy, I'll go back to PhotoPea, Control V. Yeah, it was the right size. That was interesting. It must have just been scaled down for the browser. So now that I've got my image and I know how big it is going to be on the screen, I'm going to resize to match this 658 by 1213. So I'll go to Image in my top menu, click Canvas size. My image size is not really what I'm concerned with. I'm concerned with my canvas size, which is just sort of what the canvas is, the whole working area. And I want to change that to 658 by 1213. So I'll choose 658, 1213. I'm still working in pixels. You can work in inches. 658 by 1213 inches would be a gigantic picture. So I'm keeping this setting at pixels. I'll click OK, and then I will move my Mandalorian around a little bit so it fits the page. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to start filling in colors, and the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use selection tools to select areas that I want to fill in, and then I'll use either a brush or a bucket tool to fill it in. So the first thing I'll do is make a selection, and there are a lot of different selection tools. We're going to be learning how to use a bunch of different ways to select things in PhotoPea, but I'm going to start you off with the magic wand, which is super simple. It basically just selects areas that are all the same color or similar colors depending on how sensitive you set it. In this case, it's just a black and white image, and so everything is just black or white. So it'll be really easy for the magic wand to find the area you're selecting, because when I make sure I'm using the magic wand, if I click on the top of the helmet here, you'll notice that it selected. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see. I'm going to hold Alt and scroll to zoom. So notice with my magic wand tool selected, if I select this inside of the helmet, it has sort of dotted lines around the inside of the helmet. Notice if I select something else like this piece of armor here, it changes with the location of the dotted lines. So that's just how it's marking a selection. So I'm going to select the top of his helmet, his armor. It's been a while since I've seen the show, but it's usually some combination of like grays and bluish gray colors. So I'm going to choose some kind of bluish gray color. It's a little too blue. Click OK, and then I'm going to choose. So the paint, I need the paint bucket that's actually hidden underneath my gradient tool. So the gradient tool is this sort of color shifted rectangle right here. Notice if I right click on it, it brings up a paint bucket option. So I'm going to choose that second option, which is the paint bucket. And now that I've got my primary color selected, that's the top color of these two, you'll notice when I set my color, I clicked the top box, not the bottom box. The top box is the primary color. It's the foreground color. It's the color you're going to use most of the time in most of your edits. And then the bottom color is a background color or secondary color. So depending on the effect you're trying to, depending on what you're trying to do, you may need a secondary color. For example, if you were fading to something, that's not what we're going to be doing for the first few projects. So just for the first few projects, if you're setting a color, it should be this top box. So I've got my sort of light blue selected. I've got my paint bucket selected. Now if I click in my selected area, that top of the helmet, it only fills in the top of the helmet. I'll select another area, so I'll just show you one more tool. If I select, I'll use my magic wand again, and I'll select an armor plate. Right here around his neck. And this time I'll fill it in with a brush. So I'll choose this brush tool, looks like a paintbrush. And you'll see my brush is kind of small. When I make it a lot bigger, you're like, why are you making it bigger? Won't it be hard to stay inside the lines if it's really big? Actually, because I have a selection made, it only fills in the selection. So I'll kind of scribble all over. It doesn't matter. It only draws in the selection. Although I can be, more selective about what I put inside. If I use the brush, I could be more selective about what I put inside that selection. I might not fill in the whole thing, for example, if I use a smaller brush. So I can shrink the brush size way down and be more selective about where I put things. So those are two different ways to fill colors in. If I change to a sort of darker gray, make another selection, and fill with the paint bucket, you can see how I can go through and color in this coloring page. And so that is pretty much all we're going to do for this first one, is just practice using the magic wand tool to make selections and using either the paint bucket or the brush to fill in those selections with color. So go ahead and find yourself a coloring page and color that coloring page in using those techniques on your own.